Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00 and welcome once again to the Bestiarum, a deep dive into the respective species of the Halo universe. And today we continue with the Forerunners in the same vein as the previous few videos by focusing in on specific rates within the Forerunners and treating them as their own independent species due to the evolutionary, genetic and morphological differences between the different rates as governed by their cultural appropriation of mutations. And today we focus in on two very similar rates that are much more enigmatic than many of the more prominent rates, and that is the Juridicals and the Catalogues and their connections to the Ecumene Council, and loosely their connections to the Guardians. The Ecumene Council was the ultimate executive and judicial body of the Forerunner Empire, and it was they who set and forced civilization-spanning policies, and apportioned rare resources such as slipspace travel capacity. It represented every significant power block and rate across the Ecumene, though the Council's holistic influence waxed and waned over the eons. Nevertheless, it remained the centre of Forerunner civilization. A minimum quorum was 500 councillors, their chambers perched in the towering and baroque cathedral spires of Maithrillion. The Ecumene Council would convene and discuss matters of galactic importance, with matters of particular prominence being paid to the Mantle of Responsibility, its enforcement and perpetrations against its tenets. In such circumstances where crimes against the Mantle or crimes against the Forerunner Ecumene themselves may have been perpetrated, the Ecumene Council would employ the use of the Juridicals and the Catalogues in fact-finding, evidence-gathering, and more broadly, legal proceedings. It was then due to their responsibilities surrounding crimes against the Mantle that Juridicals and Catalogues were afforded security clearances, restricted access, and the respect of even the most senior members of the Forerunner Empire. The Juridicals and Catalogues were in direct service of the Ecumene Council and, by extension, the Mantle of Responsibility, and thus carried with them all of the authority that the Ecumene and the Mantle demanded of the denizens of the Forerunner Empire. The Juridical rate were lawmakers and mediators, charged with ensuring compliance to the edicts of the Mantle and all directives issued by the Ecumene Council. Through their proxies and agents, they could reach across the Ecumene to investigate criminal activity and judge actions. They worked closely with Haruspis in the course of their duties, but most other rates were viewed by Juridicals with some degree of cynicism and distrust, due to their role as enforcers of uncompromising virtue. The Juridicals had access to a dedicated galaxy-wide communication and travel network, known as the Juridical Network, that gave them almost complete autonomy from domain monitoring and travel overwatch. But this system was eventually compromised by the Flood and cordoned off to mitigate spread of the Logic Plague, which disrupted all investigatory and judicial proceedings, effectively shutting down the Ecumene's legal system. The head of the Juridical rate was known as the Master Juridical, and many of the Juridicals themselves belonged to Catalogue, a group of evidence-gathering agents who were viewed as the same individual. A fact that is lesser known is that the Juridicals would frequently call upon the expertise of the Interpreters, a once powerful rate amongst the Forerunners. They were experts in the study and interpretation of the Mantle of Responsibility. Now wiped from the records, their contributions diminished until they were seen as trivial and eventually forgotten altogether. Millions of years worth of history, wealth, culture, knowledge and ritual were forcibly absorbed by the Builders, who accomplished this through a consistent erosion of the rate's contributions, through corruption and misinformation. Interpreters would work with Juridicals in cases of crimes against the Mantle of Responsibility, with the Interpreters' judgments often taking precedence over the Juridicals themselves. However, having long since been absorbed into the Builder rate, the Interpreters have become all but a distant memory. The Didact's bloodline can actually be traced to the Interpreters, which may be a reason why the Didact seems so committed to the tenets of the Mantle in spite of being a warrior servant and thus whose warlike actions stand in contradiction to the peaceful tenets of the mantle. During the rule of the Old Council, Juridicals were corrupted by the Master Builder Faber, and were ultimately used to pursue his agenda. Some Juridicals even held controversially nonchalant views regarding the threat posed by the parasite. In spite of the Flood's threat to biodiversity across the galaxy, the Juridicals' opinions in this seemed to be that since the Gravemind retained the memories of the beings they absorbed, it was reasoned that as long as the civilization's constituent information was not lost, it would theoretically continue to exist even within the Flood Collective, meaning the existence of the Flood was not an affront to the mantle. Catalogue, a unique group of foreigners who gave up their personal identity and history in the service of justice, were dispatched to collect evidence for juridical legal cases at the Ecumene Council's direction. Individuals were penitents drawn from every rate, each becoming a half-alive husk who had volunteered for extreme indoctrination and personality conditioning to root out even the barest hint of unethical conduct as a form of penance for some past crime. Catalogues were tasked to record evidence related to a given case and determine what would be passed on for the Juridicals to analyse. When on an official mission mandated by the Ecumene, no one, no matter their rank, position or title, was allowed to interfere with the catalogue's investigation. They would take evidence and information gathering in a variety of ways, including direct observation and taking the testimonials of individuals connected to the case. Catalogue was even authorised to force an individual to divulge information through artificially induced calming encouragement. Each individual foreigner that volunteered to become a catalogue was encased in a coffin-like mechanical carapace designed for optimum observation and recording, and allowing it to interview quickly and efficiently while contacting the network as often as necessary. This carapace was also capable of surviving in hard vacuum and other dangerous environmental conditions. They moved with the assistance of 5 legs, and their only other appendages were sensory nodes, which could extend to scan evidence, take accounts, or compel testimony. Each catalogue unit possessed a direct connection to the juridical network and its fellow units, as well as the highest levels of security access and council authority to carry out its assigned missions. When assuming the carapace, the biological body of the Forerunner was reduced into a shriveled, misshapen form, described as half-alive husk. The carapace also acted as a life support system for the withered body within. If a member of Catalogue chose to disconnect from the carapace, it would suffocate, which was considered an honourable death in the event of failure, though it would not be allowed to do so as catalogues were considered too valuable. Catalogue were conspicuously distinct from ordinary foreigners due to its exotic physical shape. It also made random internal clicking and slopping noises, which some foreigners, including the erudite, found disgusting. Each catalogue referred to themselves solely as catalogue, used as a name, not as a title, as if to suggest that each instance of catalogue was completely indistinguishable from all others. While catalogue generally appeared to outsiders as being identical in mannerisms and personality, each individual's distinct origins inevitably resulted in subtle differences between their behaviours, sometimes enough for an attentive outsider to be able to discern the rate of origin of an individual catalogue. However, catalogue was not really supposed to reveal its origins or its individual reasons for assuming the carapace to others, as its former identity was supposed to have been suppressed in favour of that of catalogue. With data, evidence and testimonials gathered by the catalogue, sent via the juridical network to the Juridicals for their decision and analysis, in circumstances where the Ecumene Council or the mantle itself was threatened, it stands to reason that the Juridicals, operating with the authority of the Ecumene Council and under the tenets of the Mantle of Responsibility, had all authority and security clearance necessary to activate and dispatch the Guardians. Towering symbols of authority and domination impassively overshadowing the face of a world, Guardians embody the great lengths the Forerunners went to enforce the tenets of the Mantle, especially in spheres that required more explicit coercion. While designed to perform a variety of roles and functions to this end, paramount was the direct governance of the various species that fell under Forerunner mentorship and monitoring. If necessary, Guardians could be deployed to intervene and subdue, destroying power systems, military assets, and industrial sites to enforce compliance with the directives of the Council. Multiple Guardian constructs could strategically coordinate their strikes, even across interstellar distances, allowing them to quickly neutralize all but the most sophisticated foes. Guardians are just one class of powerful security custodes employed by the Forerunners known as peacemakers, guided by artificial minds carefully designed to carry out the Council's will. Arcani and intercessors patrolled the Ecumene at large, focused on correcting disruptions that arose from internecine disputes, neglect and damage to habitability on Forerunner worlds. Guardians and preceptors were tasked with monitoring the activity of lesser species, interceding to cordon off fledgling empires and recasting their developmental trajectories along paths more in line with the precepts of the Mantle. Joined to the domain's expansive Overwatch network, many threats to the Ecumene were engaged and dealt with effectively, well before acquiring the consideration of Warrior Servant and Builder Security Command. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, kindly tap that like button, and if you're not already subscribed and want to see more stuff like this, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. Pop a comment down below telling me what you thought of today's video, or if you want me to cover something specific in the near future. I want to take this opportunity to thank and give shoutouts to my patrons and YouTube supporters: Spartan10148, my singular contender class Ancilla, the triumvirate of minds within my installations Metarch, Falcon, Jordan and Poseidon, my 7 installation monitors Selphia, Ashley, Esoteric, Spartan1029, Chris, Orion and Shane, the crush of sub-monitors Legion, Ryan, Lebrat, Spartan0137, Element 0, J3, Cult, Evermore's, Personal Devil, Scion Esports, Phantasma, Ashton and 191 Shaken Lightbulb, my fleet of Strato Sentinels, my most loyal of Enforcers, and every single one of the awesome people supporting the channel over on Patreon. My Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members Spartan137, again, Maury, Jimbo and Balaz, and all other YouTube members keeping my installation functional on that glorious vacuum energy. I cannot thank you all enough. Shout out to John because... And if you like what I'm doing here, consider supporting the channel on one of the support links in the description to net yourself some tasty merch and help keep the channel going. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.